Hi, in the next couple of videos we're going to go through how to develop some concepts for a top-down shooter spaceship really quickly. We're going to make something like this, but this is just a primer really, and an introduction, just to go through some things, because I rattle through these things without saying every single button press. So if you're less familiar with Photoshop, the main thing is that I'll be doing is using Ctrl-T, which is the transform tool. So well, the first thing is, if you want to find out what this layer is, I can right click and it will tell me. If I click on it, then it will go to that layer and I can select it and move it, so that's cool. I can use a selection, select part of it, Ctrl-C to copy it, Ctrl-V to paste it, and it'll paste it into a new layer. What I might want to do is, if I hit Ctrl-T, it's going to give me a transform. This is in the menu is here, Edit, Transform, and you can pick all kinds of things here, like skewing it and stuff like that. But what I tend to do is, if I go back to here, Ctrl-T to transform, you can scale it by grabbing it, or like that. If you hover into the corners, you can rotate it, which is useful to know. When you're done, just double click it and it will re-rasterize. And if you want to skew it or distort it or kind of change the shape of it, if you hit Ctrl-T again, if you hold Control down on any of these corner points, you can see it turns to a little white arrow. Then if you left click, you can actually drag it out. So the other things I do are make selections and hit delete or backspace to remove what's inside. If you want to remove what's outside, to undo, Ctrl-Alt-Z to undo. If I do this selection and say I want to keep this part, don't want to keep the bit that's outside, if I right click, go to select inverse and then hit backspace, and then I'll just keep that part. The other thing that I use a lot is I want to make a duplicate of this layer as it is. Then I can drag this layer down onto the new layer slot and it will create a copy of it, which I can then move. I also flip, I think I talk about this in the videos anyway, flip horizontal a lot. I've got this set to a hotkey, which is Ctrl-F. You can create that in keyboard shortcuts, edit, keyboard shortcuts, just find where the shortcut, the thing on the menu is that you want, so it's under the edit menu. Remember where we saw this before, it's a transform, down to flip horizontal. You just type in what you want to use. But it's handy to have a few of those things, because then you can put them together. So say I put these together and that's what I want to use, but I want to be able to move them together. The two ways you can do that, you can create a group, so you can keep them together. So if I hold this, if I select both of these and then select this folder, it will put them in the group. I can undo that, or I can create a group and then I can move them inside. Oh, I still have them selected. Not have them selected would be a good idea. A group, nothing selected, take those, shift to select more than one, drag them over the group, and then they're inside it. And then I can select the group and move it. What you may find is when you use Photoshop, it won't do that. When you go to do this, it'll do this. No matter how many times you select the group, it will select one of them. And that's because you have auto select on. So if you switch that off, it's like useless, that thing. Then it'll move the group. So that's one way you can do it. The other way you can do it, if we go back a few steps, is you can just select the two, so shift to select them both, right click, merge the layers, and then they're both together. Okay, so I think I've covered my back there. Other things I do a lot is, so I've got the brush tool, and I generally use just the standard hard round brush, so nothing too exciting there. And what I tend to do is I use the bracket keys to change the size. So right hand bracket key makes it bigger, left hand bracket key makes it smaller. That's just really basic, nothing too exciting there. What I was doing there was I just selected it so that it flicks between black and white. If you want to flick the foreground and the background layer, you hit the X key. So now it's white, now it's black, which is useful when using masks. The way masks work are if I create a mask for this, just hit this button here, then this mask, basically if I paint into this mask, if I paint into this mask with black, then it will remove that from here. So if I have my black brush and I have my mask selected, just want to do that. Then I'm removing elements of that, but I'm not actually, I'm just painting it into the mask. So I can, because I've got black selected, if I hit X and now have white, I can paint it back out of the mask and it restores what was there before. So it's completely non-destructive. So that's useful. Another thing that's useful to know, if you don't know it already, is, so I'll create a new layer, is if I paint, I'm doing, that's fine, freeform. If I hold shift down, I can constrain my line, which is handy to know. The other thing that's cool is using smoothing. In fact, I've got some smoothing switched on. So this is me painting with a mouse. If I add some smoothing to it, drags it along. It's basically like a lazy mouse if you've used that. It gives me a much smoother stroke, and obviously the more that I do this, the further away I am from the stroke, the smoother the result. If you want to get kind of more precise lines, then it's worth using. Obviously I'm using Control C and Control V to copy and paste. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to cover. Most of the stuff I think is in the rest of it. So yeah, so the goal of this really is just to basically get something which is a good starting point. We'll do most of the heavy lifting in 3D, but it's just to get something to get you started really. Okay, cheers.